Welcome back to Self Love Ignited. Today on the podcast, I had the pleasure of interviewing Karin Nelson. Karin is a divorce confidence coach who helps moms move past the misery of their broken marriage, helping them redefine their life after divorce. Now, Karin went through her own divorce a little over 5 years ago, and she came on today to share her story. Karin was married for close to 20 years and was in a state of mind thinking that her happiness, everything would depend on her partner. She had never even had a full-time job of her own. And through learning who she was, asking herself what she wanted, giving herself permission to act on the answer, Karin has been able to create a life better than she could ever have imagined. She now loves herself. She treats herself with exquisite kindness, in her words. It's the most beautiful term for self-love. And she helps other women do the same. Divorce used to be something that was shameful, that was hush hush, that we don't talk about. You know what? It's pretty common. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about divorce, and let's talk about your relationship with yourself as you go through it. This is a great episode. Listen in. Here's Karin. My name is Katie Allen, and this is Self Love Ignited. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Self Love Ignited. Today on the podcast, I'm interviewing Karin Nelson. Karin, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited that we're finally having this conversation. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody?
Thank you so much, Katie. I am so excited too. I've been looking forward to this. We've had it scheduled for a little while and I'm so excited. But I'm Karin Nelson. I am actually a divorce confidence coach. And basically what that means is I help women who are going through a divorce or who are divorced find confidence after this change in their life, because I also went through a divorce and had to figure out where that confidence came from. I am a mom of two amazing kids, although they're growing up on me faster than anything. They're now 20 and 17, and time flies. And yeah, I love having fun. I love cats. And that's kind of a little bit about me,
Love it.
you could say.
I love it. It's always funny when you have to introduce yourself, right? You're like, what should I share today? Like just whatever comes to mind. No, that's the best. That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. So Karin, you and I connected because, this podcast is about self-love, right? And you reached out and we started having a conversation, and you have a really interesting and very I want to say unique, but I don't think it's actually that unique. I just think that you're really open to sharing it, but you have a really, really great story. So I want you to take us back to the beginning of this story. Self-love, your relationship with yourself. Where did your challenges begin? And then how did that sort of unfold through your life? Walk us through it.
Yeah. So I am from Utah, and maybe some of your listeners will know that in Utah, it's a very Mormon centric, which is Mormon is a religion, the LDS church. It's a very Mormon centric community. And one of the things that women and girls are kind of taught and brought up to believe is that it's kind of our job to be a mom and to get married young and to stay home with the kids. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. I think that's amazing to get married and be a mom. But for me personally, I took that to heart and really wanted to dive into that. So I got married when I was 19 years old and fell in love with this guy, great guy. And we started having kids at around 24. And it was really just my plan to be the wife, have kids and stay home with the kids and not really have a job. I did get my degree, but I didn't plan on using it for anything. I literally in my head was like, I'll just get this degree in history. I'm not ever going to use it. I just like history. So I'll just get my degree in that because I'm just going to stay home and be the mom and raise the kids. And my husband is going to get the job and he's going to support us. And I'll just be like the support of him. And if he's happy, then I will be happy. And if my kids are happy, then I will totally be happy. And I 100% believed that story, that like as long as he came home from work and was happy, or he came home from school as he was trying to get his degree and he was happy, then I could give myself permission to also be happy. And we were together for almost 20 years, and I believed that story for, I would say, the majority of that 20 years. And it is not true at all. I had to learn really the hard way that I have to take care of my own happiness.
Mhm.
And it was really difficult for me to, it was like a rude awakening of over the years recognizing that, like, oh, if he's happy, I'm actually not very happy sometimes. And I actually do have wants and needs, but I keep like putting them on the back burner and shushing them and making them go away. And I'm finding myself like just very unfulfilled, very unhappy. And I'm kind of taking it out on him because I'm kind of blaming him, like, well, you're supposed to be happy, which makes me happy. And it just turned into this big cycle of nobody ended up being happy overall
Yeah.
for quite a few years, unfortunately, and maybe fortunately in the long run, I think. So
Right, right. Well, yeah, because it's all brought you here, to where you are today. So fortunately or unfortunately, but it
yes,
was all for the greater good, right? But I mean, I think it's
yes,
I think it's interesting, like you said, like this was part of your upbringing, right? Like being
yep,
in that community, that's not something that everybody experiences. But a lot of people experience this idea that their happiness should come from outside, that their happiness should come from their
yes,
partner, that their fulfillment should come from their partner, that they
yep,
have this sort of, quote unquote, like ideal life, whether it's like, being a mom and having kids. And it's like, well, that's it. That should be enough for you. And
yep.
like you said, you had a rude awakening that it sure as hell was not.
I really did. When my husband at the time and I mean, we had been kind of back and forth on should we or shouldn't we get divorced, and neither of us really would decide and or could decide. I think for us it was just like neither of us were really willing to take that step. And I just remember being on this walk. I would go on walks a lot just to try and clear my head and be with myself and try and figure out what I really wanted. And I remember specifically this one morning, I was on a walk and I just said to myself, what do you want, Karin? And I think it was the very first time that I ever had allowed myself to give an honest answer
Yeah.
and say out loud, I want a divorce. And
Mm.
I felt immediate peace with that answer, which was surprising to me because a divorce isn't necessarily the thing that most people would think you would want. And especially with my religious upbringing, I'm not in the religion any longer, but I still have all of that socialization and that cultural identity that, I grew up with and had for so long. And divorce is, I mean, people do it in that religion, but it's very uncommon and it's very frowned upon. And so even just allowing myself to like answer that question honestly and
Yeah.
feel that peace was kind of part of that surprise, that rude awakening of like, wait, can I actually do this? Is it really okay for me to take this step
Yeah.
and do something that I want because I want it and because I think that it will be best for me? And I had to allow myself to recognize that that answer was yes, and that it was okay for me to take that step forward. And I think that was part of the rude awakening, but also like the very first step to that self love change that I had been lacking for so long.
Yeah.
So it was an important step, but what comes after that is really where that rude awakening comes. And that's when I started to realize like, oh, I don't even really like myself. I don't even know who I am. And
Yeah.
that was the rude awakening of like, who am I? I look in the mirror and I really don't enjoy this person that I see
Yeah.
staring back at me. And so, yeah, but it was that important first step, I think, to
Yeah.
self-love.
Well, and I think it's important not to undervalue that first step, because quite often the
Yeah.
first step is the scariest, right? It's the most foreign. It's the thing that you've spent your entire life not doing, maybe being told you shouldn't do, believing you shouldn't
Yeah.
do, and asking that question and getting an honest answer and listening to it. You could have gotten that
Yeah.
answer and just been like, nope, nope, and pushed it away, right? And kept walking
Yeah.
and ignored it. But you heard it and you went, oh,
Yeah.
right? It caught you and you caught it.
Yeah.
And then you did
Yeah.
something with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is, and I still use this phrase today, but from that point on, I gave myself permission to be honest with myself and to listen to that inner knowing that I think we all have as
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah.
Just often it gets pushed down. Like I said, we push it away and we want to pretend like it's not there, because you're right. It is scary
Mm-hmm.
to sometimes follow that inner knowing
Mm-hmm.
because it's so far out of our comfort zone. And me being married since I was 19 and being in this relationship for 20 years and having two kids and not, I mean, I had a part-time job, but it wasn't like I'm making a ton of money. And
Right.
there's so many thoughts that come along with going into a divorce that are so scary. And just opening up to like, I'm going to give myself permission to listen
Yeah.
and be okay with whatever comes, even if it's scary and even if it's hard. And I don't know where it's going to take me, but I'm willing to at least take that first step.
Yeah.
So,
That's amazing. That's incredible. Tell us what happened after that. After the question, after you got your answer, you gave yourself permission. What happened on the outside in the physical world, and what happened on the inside?
these
Yeah.
are good questions. Okay. So, the outside part was I went back to my husband and I told him that I wanted a divorce. And he was like, okay, let's move forward with this. I think he probably was in the same boat as me, as he just wanted somebody to give permission that it was okay.
Right.
And so thankfully, and I really have to give a lot of credit to my ex, I had this vision in my head that I really wanted our divorce to be different than everything that we see out there as a divorce, of just all the animosity and the, tearing families apart and going through the kids and really taking sides and all that. And I didn't want it to be like that. And I voiced that to him. And I just said, I really want this to be different. I feel like we have the opportunity where we can be friends and we can be good co-parents. And I want us to be there for our kids. And he was totally on board. I know that is not the case for so many people, but I'm so grateful that he was.
Yeah.
And not that we haven't had challenges and not that it wasn't hard. Of course it was. And it hurt and all the things, right? All the emotional and mental things that come, but we have been able to create a great relationship. So I went to him, I said this thing, and we just started to move forward with the divorce. And we actually stayed separated for about a year and lived in the same house, just separate rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would take a few nights off from the kids and go out and do whatever. And then he would be home with the kids and then vice versa. And then sometimes we were all together, just to create that nuclear family for ourselves. So from that point of view, I think it really worked for us. And it really built confidence in me that, like, as we were moving forward, I can do this. I know he's still here, but I'm not relying on him every second. And I'm figuring out a little bit more about me and what I want. And it gave me a little more confidence that we were going to be okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
But internally, like I said, I kind of alluded to earlier, I had the worst self-esteem. I just didn't like myself. I mean, I was constantly beating myself up, telling myself that he was going to be, because he had a lot of hobbies, and he was probably going to, it was going to be so easy for him to like make new friends and find somebody to date, or move on with his life after the divorce was over. And I'd been a stay-at-home mom. Like, I had a few friends, but I didn't really have hobbies. Again, my whole life was attached to his happiness. And that meant, well, if you like this thing, that I probably like this thing too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't even know who I was. I didn't have any kind of self-esteem that was kind or loving. I was constantly beating myself up for my looks and how much I weighed, and if I fit into this certain size, and if I looked like that person. And now I'm going through a divorce, and nobody in my family has ever been through a divorce, and I don't have any other friends who are divorced. And like, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me.
Right.
And recognizing that I couldn't continue thinking those thoughts and really beating myself up every second of the day, because it didn't feel good. I felt like trash.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, I had read some self-help books and had a little bit of knowledge about that. And so I just was like, okay, what can I do to start to change that narrative that I have of myself? Because it's not going to come from my soon-to-be ex-husband. It's not going to come from my kids.
Yeah.
It has to come from me. And so I just decided one morning, I think I was in my bathroom getting ready for the day. And I just decided, for the next little bit, you're just going to tell yourself 5 things that you like about yourself. And I don't care what they are. You have to believe them. They have to be true in some way, but you're going to do that. And this is all in my head, right? I'm just telling myself in my head.
Yeah.
And so I started that morning, and I thought of 5 things, and most of them were very physical. Like, I really like my curly hair, and I have a great smile, and I like my laugh, and I think I'm a good mom, and I'm great at waking up early in the morning. Like, just very basic.
Yeah.
Anybody could try and find 5 things about themselves, maybe, right?
Yeah.
And then I did it the next day, and I had to say the same 5 things because I literally couldn't think of anything else to say about myself that I liked. And I think, thinking back, it took me about 3 weeks of just repeating the same 5 things. And sometimes I would say them even during the middle of the day, when I'd start to hear that voice of like, you're the worst, you've done everything wrong. Maybe if you had done something different, this would have worked out different, or whatever voice would come up, you know?
Yeah.
And so I would just repeat, like, okay, but I really like my curly hair. It's really pretty. And I really like my smile. And I am a good mom. And I would just remind myself of these kind things about me.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 3 weeks, I started noticing more things, and I started saying those. And I never had to go past 5. Like, 5 was my minimum. But if I wanted to add a few more, I could. But I would kind of change them up and start looking for new things. And I started to notice that I was changing.
Yeah.
As the inner voice began to change, the outer me started to change too. And I started to look at myself differently. I held myself differently. I showed up in my life way different. And yeah, it's so fun to think back to who I was and where I am now. And I give that Karin so much credit for really being willing to take the steps to make the change, because you said it before, we will notice it sometimes, but we are scared to take that change. And it can be scary even to be nice to yourself
Yes.
if you've been in a habit for so long of
Yep.
speaking mean and believing all of those mean things about yourself, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It is. It is.
So,
And I think it's like that's a really important point, because a lot of people think like this shouldn't be scary, and then they judge
yeah,
themselves for feeling scared. This shouldn't feel hard, and then they judge themselves for feeling hard. And it's
yeah,
like, but it is, because it's foreign. And even though logically your logical brain is going, this is not a big deal, this shouldn't be a big deal, it is a big deal, right? Because our emotions are not
yeah,
logical. It's a different part
yeah,
of our brain, and it requires compassion and understanding and gentleness, and understanding that it's not logical and that that's okay,
yeah,
right? Like, it's
yes.
like an allowing. You just have to allow it. Whatever comes up, allow it to come up, and then you move through it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that and love that. And it was one of the things that I had to learn. And I didn't really know what it was at the time. I didn't know that change was actually happening. I just had some kind of belief somewhere deep inside that maybe if I'm nice to myself for a couple minutes a day,
Yeah.
like, I might, show up differently. And it really did change
Yeah.
my me on the outside and me on the inside, and how I look at the world too.
Yeah.
The perception of, like, I recognize so often how mean women are to not just other women, but mostly just to themselves,
Yeah. Mhm.
how critical we are of ourselves and how we compare ourselves and think that we just can't live up to certain standards. And I notice it all the time because I used to be that way. And now I can, like, I of course I'm still critical sometimes. I'm not perfect. Let's just,
Yeah.
I'm human,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I'm able to recognize it so much faster and
Yeah.
really give myself that compassion and that love, and say, okay, hang on, what's happening here? What do you need
Yeah.
right now in this moment? Like, where is that comparison coming from? What do you need to fill up that void that you feel like you're not meeting, the
Mm,
outside need, kind of
mm,
thing.
mhm, mhm.
So
We as humans, as women, I think especially, we have
yeah,
the capacity to be very cruel, and that is a skill that many people hone over a lifetime. Right? Like I think we've all heard
yeah,
the saying, like, kids can be mean, kids on the playground and teasing and bullying and stuff. That's where it starts. And even though it changes, but that skill is something that is inside. And if you keep using it, it gets better and better and better and better, even if it's just turned at yourself, right? It gets better and
yes,
better and better. But the fact that it's a skill means that you can unlearn it and learn something new in its place, right? You have that ability.
yes,
So okay, so I love that you started this journey, like this self-love journey, just noticing 5 things that you like about yourself, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's a simple thing, but not an easy thing, but a very simple
Yep.
thing. Like, is there anything else? Because obviously you're very different now today than you were, when you started that and you just had to repeat the same 5 things for 3 weeks before it
Yep.
started changing, right? Like I'm sure there's been a lot happening in that time. So what other
Yeah.
things have been helpful for you as you healed your relationship with yourself? Has there been like, have you worked with mentors? Is it like meditation or journaling, or like are there other physical things that you've done that have been really
Yes.
powerful for you?
Yes, several things. So, coaching, obviously, I'm a coach, but I didn't even know about coaching until I had already been divorced like 2.5 years. And then I was introduced to coaching. And so I immediately got a coach and was like, this is magic.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm biased because I am a coach now, but
Yeah.
it really is magic because
Yeah.
it's so helpful to have someone else look at your brain and recognize
Yes.
what you can't see because your
Yes.
brain hides things from you. Your brain lies to you all the time. And if you don't recognize it, then it's hard to see, right? And so that was one things for sure. Self-help books, I really love listening to books and going for walks. And for me, that is kind of my meditation. And there were certain books and certain authors who just changed the way I thought and the way I saw the world and opened my eyes up to things that I had never even imagined before. I didn't understand that thoughts created how we feel and that our feelings really, drove our actions. I didn't really understand how that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And so authors who introduced me to that and taught me more about that, I would say was my way of meditation.
Yeah.
Um, Journaling also really, when I would get really upset or um, in my head about things, just writing out all of the things that were going on in my head was so helpful for me. It still is helpful to just get everything out so that I don't have to keep carrying it around inside my head,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
sometimes we'll just let it spin and go down the rabbit hole and tell ourselves again, that's where that voice will come in and just tell you that you're the worst and you're doing it all wrong. And so just getting it all out, no
Yeah.
judgment, not even really reading it back sometimes, just writing it all down so it's out there on the page.
Yeah.
And not even a journal, like not a journal that I'm going to keep and take with me for years for my kids to read,
Right.
just thoughts out on paper.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten about this until you mentioned what was one thing that really helped you. But in one of the very first things that I did through this separation and divorce journey, just for me, was I started a YouTube channel. My kids were really into YouTube. They were much younger at the time. And I didn't really know anything about making videos. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know anything about any of it. And I was just like, all right, I can start a YouTube channel. I can like review things that I think are fun or tell about my day and blog a little. And so I just started a YouTube channel and I called it Completely Karin. And I just made videos about whatever I was interested in and whatever I wanted to talk about. And sometimes my kids were in them and sometimes it was just me. And even some days, I think I still have a video from years and years ago up where I just was having the worst day. I think my ex and I at the time, we were still living together and we had gotten in a fight and I was just having the absolute worst day. And I made a video where I just talked everything out. And it was kind of like therapy in video. And I just kind of talked about my thoughts and how I was feeling. And by the end of the video, I felt so much better. And I put it out there and I just allowed myself to be open in a way that I had never been
Yeah.
before in my
Yeah.
life. And it really all goes back to giving myself permission to figure out who I am and what I enjoy and allowing myself to be me in a way that I had kind of been quieting for such a long time.
Mm.
So that was a big moment for me of just starting the channel, figuring out how to edit, teaching myself things that I didn't know how to do before. Sometimes when we immerse ourselves in hard things, even though they're hard and challenging, it's so good for our brain to recognize that, like, I can do this. I
Yeah.
can figure this thing out. I can, create this new thing in my life that I've never had before. And just that act gives us confidence, which helps us grow. And it kind of creates a cycle of feeling confident, thinking that we're confident, doing things that make us feel confident, and then it, continues
Yes.
in that cycle.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So
I always say courage before confidence. Like you don't have
yeah.
confidence in step one, but it takes courage to like do the scary thing, do the unknown thing, do the hard thing.
Hmm.
And then you get confidence, like you said. And then it's this beautiful like snowball effect. And then
Yes.
and when you can feel confident in like starting a YouTube channel, which by the way, takes like, that's a big deal. Like putting yourself out there, like just that level of vulnerability in and of itself
Yeah.
takes a lot of courage, but then also like the physical actually doing it as well.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, like developing courage in that area, developing confidence in that area, that spills over, right? If I can do this, what else can I
Yes.
do? If I can do this, what else can I do? If I
Yes.
can do this, what else can I do? And I imagine as you're going through a divorce and you're probably not feeling confident about much of anything in your life,
Yeah.
it would sort of create a bit of a foundation for you.
Yeah. And it really did,
Yeah.
which it was surprising to me because that wasn't my goal at
Yeah.
all. I didn't go into it thinking, I'm going to make this YouTube channel and I'm going to get so confident in myself and feel so good. Like, no, I just was like, I think I'm going to try this. And I'm sure, like, you could go back. It's still up. I still use that channel for my podcast now, but all of my old videos are still up there. And I'm sure some of them are so stupid and silly, but it didn't matter. Like, to me at
Yeah.
the time, that's what I needed. I
Yeah.
absolutely needed that growth and to show up for myself in that way.
Yeah.
And it just kind of grew into something so much greater. And the love for myself continues to this day. It just grows, and I'm learning more about myself and more ways to show up for myself. And then I just go out there and hopefully can share that with other people, just like you're doing, which I absolutely love.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what that's what we do, right? We go through our own personal stuff and then we think, how can I help somebody else with this? And
Yeah.
everybody does it in all different ways. And you and I happen to do it through coaching and podcasting, which is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Karin, I'm curious. Before you talked a lot about how your happiness was very tied into your husband's happiness. Like if he's happy, I'm happy. And that was it. And then you had this journey of this ongoing journey, right? It's not over. It's still going. It's always going. But this journey of learning about yourself and who you are and what you like. And I'm curious, how has that redefined your other relationships? Now that you're no longer
Mm.
dependent on other people for that, or a partner for that, how has that redefined your relationships with your kids, with family, with friends? Like, what's the difference now?
Yeah. Well, I have a boyfriend now, and I've had a boyfriend for about, gosh, I think it's about 5 years now. And with that relationship in and of itself, it's so beyond what I could ever imagine, because I don't rely on him to validate me constantly and tell me that I'm, Karin, you're so amazing and you're so beautiful, and like whatever else validation we seek as humans, right?
Yeah.
And not that he doesn't. He is lovely about that, but I don't need it to
Yes.
love myself. And I don't need it to feel good about myself, because I am giving myself that validation. I'm telling myself constantly, great job. I'm celebrating myself so much, probably way more than most people think. But like if I like, you know, get 3 listens on my podcast and I see it, I'm like, oh my gosh, good job. That was so awesome of you to put that out there and somebody listened. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
or if I get up a little bit earlier than I thought that I was going to, and I'm excited about my day, I'm like, good job, way to get up and like get your day started. And just, I'm showing up for myself in a way that I'm not needing other people to fill that void for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes pressure off of that relationship.
Yeah.
I'm not needy in a way that often we are in relationships, where we're turning to the other person and really seeking something from them that we're not providing for ourselves. And when we first started dating, I wasn't in this space. Like I said, this was 5 years ago. This was kind of, as I'm going through this journey of figuring out who I am. And he was so good about opening my eyes to, I remember specifically one conversation that we had where he said, what specifically do you like? What are you looking for in this relationship? And I just said, I just want you to be there for me. And he was like, what does that mean? And I paused and I was like, what does that mean? I'm not even sure. I think it was just something that I'd been telling myself, like, I just need someone to be there for me, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I didn't even know specifically what that meant. And I really had to dive in and figure that out for myself so that I didn't have to rely on it from
Right.
him.
Right.
And it really has allowed me to show up as who I am, and I've allowed him to be who he is. And then we're able to create this amazing relationship. And I see that spill over with my relationship with my kids as well. I have learned to not mirror their emotions, or at least I'm learning. It's still challenging at
Yeah.
times, but
Yeah.
if my son comes home from school and he's upset, I often would just jump into fix it mode
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
okay, we got to fix this. I don't want you to be upset. Just let's fix it. What's wrong? Tell me, talk to me, tell me all the things. And when he's upset, he doesn't want to talk. He doesn't want to tell me, he doesn't want me to fix it. And I really had to step into this space of, it's okay for me to still be happy and, be having a good day. And it's okay for him to come home upset. And I don't have to get upset that he's upset. And I don't have to change my happiness to try and make him happy or make him feel bad that he's not happy or any of those things. I can give him the space to be upset. I can stay in my own space of happiness, and I can feel bad, like, oh, I'm so sorry. That's a bummer that you're upset. I'm in here to talk, like ready to talk if you want to talk.
Yeah.
I'm here if you need anything from me. I love you. And then I just allow him to be upset for as long as he needs, and then he can process it, and then he's done. Like, there's no animosity between us. It's not a challenge anymore for
Yeah.
me to try and fix him or make him feel better or make it seem like he needs to be happy so I can be happy. Kind of that whole story that I had before. I can just be whatever I'm feeling and he can be whatever he's feeling, and they're both okay. There's nothing wrong with the emotions that we're feeling.
Yeah.
And I've been able to do that with my daughter as well. And so for me, that is how my relationships have changed. Just really allowing people to be themselves, to not expect them to, show up for me in a certain way. And hopefully they're learning, maybe not, but hopefully they're learning that they also don't have to show up in a certain way to, get something from me to feel a certain way.
Right. Right. It's beautiful that when we show up as our true selves, like you have done the work to figure out who that is, right?
Yeah.
And then you're showing up as that person, that it gives the other people in our lives permission to do the exact same. It takes all
Yeah.
the pressure off, all this pressure of should, you should do this, you should be like this, you
Yes.
should be less of this, you should be there for me. And it's just an allowing, and it's like you
Yeah.
get to, yeah, I don't know, it's beautiful. Listening to you speak about that is really beautiful. That's wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Karin, I'm curious, this journey that you've been on, would you call it a self-love journey? Is it like self-love, self-acceptance? Like what term do you like to use for that?
I think it's all of those things. I I use them all because I think they all kind of meld into one. But lately, I have been kind of referring to this journey as like this exquisite kindness that I have adopted
Mm,
for myself. Because I don't think for most of my life, I'm almost 45, and I think for probably the first, I don't know, 38, 39 years. I mean, I don't really remember much from when I was young, but for many of those years, I just wasn't kind to myself. And
yeah.
so I've really been learning how to be kind, and not just kind like, oh, I like you, you're here today, you showed up for your job, whatever, but like exquisitely kind, like more
Mm,
kind than most of us think we need. Because I think when it comes to negativity and the voices that we hear in our head that are so negative, it's
mm,
almost like you need extra
yeah.
kindness to override that, because it's always going to be there, right? We can't
Mhm,
get rid of those voices. They're
mhm,
never going to go away just because of our human nature and the way our brain is built, and what we've grown up with our whole lives, and what we're hearing and seeing outside of us constantly. We're
yeah.
constantly bombarded with it.
Yes.
And so really showing up with that exquisite kindness
Mm,
for yourself, and when you can do that and learn how to do that, and get better at it,
Mm-hmm.
then you show up with that kindness for other people as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I think the more we can learn to do that as women, especially because women rule the world, we all know this, right? We truly are the ones who guide all of the things. We guide our families, we guide our relationships. And when we can show up with that exquisite kindness for ourselves, it will just flow out into the world. And that is how the world is going to change. But it has to start with us. It has to start with that. And you can call it self-love. I, of course, still use the term self-love and acceptance and, worthiness and all of the things.
Yeah.
But I think it starts with that kindness to yourself. That just,
You gave me goosebumps when you were talking about
good. I'm so glad.
it. I could not agree more. And exquisite kindness, what a beautiful way of pulling it together, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's a very gentle term, and something that everybody can, in their own way, find within themselves. We all have the capacity to be kind. Not everybody believes that and I know this because I've heard from people, not everybody who listens to this podcast has the belief that they have the ability to love themselves. Sometimes love can feel very far away. That's why I asked the
Right.
question, right? It's a good question. It's a good conversation to have. Sometimes love feels very far away, but kindness
Yeah.
is accessible. Kindness is something that you
Yeah.
can choose right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we all know how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Even if we don't know how to do it to ourselves yet,
Yeah.
we do know how to be kind to other people.
Yes.
It's how so many of us are raised,
Yes.
show that kindness to other people. So take what you know to do for other people and just turn it inward
Yeah.
and start to give yourself some of that exquisite kindness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Karin, I want to hear about your journey into entrepreneurship. As a woman who was raised kind of believing that you'd never really have a career path, went to
Yeah.
university, a degree, don't really want it, don't really need it.
Like the throwaway degree.
Like a throwaway degree, exactly. So how did this journey of self-love, of exquisite kindness, how did this and entrepreneurship come together? Like, tell us about that, because that feels like a really big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal because I always liked to work. I mean, even when I was married, I had a part-time job, but it had nothing to do. I was a medical transcriptionist. It had nothing to do with my degree at all. Like I said, I just really didn't. I wasn't planning on using that degree.
Yeah.
It was such a throwaway degree. So silly of me, but it's okay. It's all right. I learned a lot of things. I had a great time. It's all good.
Right.
But so yeah, I was introduced to coaching and I got a coach and I just kind of thought, I'm a kind person. I love to help people. And I've been through this hard thing and I've watched myself change and grow. What if I just became a life coach? And I had no idea how I was going to do that. I didn't know what that even meant or entailed. And I had no idea how to build a business at all. Right. I mean, I had been in some, MLMs or, whatever those are called, business in a box type things,
Mm-hmm.
and had failed miserably at the three that I had ever tried because I didn't want to talk to people and I didn't really want to sell to people and that's all scary and I don't want to do those things.
Yeah.
And I think really looking back, I was never really super passionate about any of those businesses or products that I was selling. And so I think that had a lot to do with it as well. And so going through this journey and really seeing that, okay, life coaching could be a path that I could get behind. I enjoy it. I love my coach. I get joy every time I'm coached or I listen to a coaching call or I hear a podcast from a coach of some kind. And I've been through this, divorce,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I came out on the other side pretty well. I have some things that I can help women with, and I understand a lot of the things that they're going to struggle with when it comes to their mental and emotional, struggles that they're going through. And so I kind of just started small. I actually started off as a mindset coach or a money mindset coach because I really loved that aspect of money mindset and trying to believe in yourself enough and create that abundance in your life that you can put yourself out there and make more money in your life in that way. And I got going in that. I did that for about 6 months to a year, and it was okay. I didn't not love it, but I didn't love it.
Yes.
And then I was like, we're just going to go for it. We're just going to go for divorce. And so I just figured, I'm a woman, I'm coaching women, that's where I'm going. And I kind of never looked back from there. And it's been a fun, difficult, scary, exciting, joyful, sometimes painful journey that continues. I'm continuing to grow and figure things out and fail so often. I fail all the time. I make many mistakes and try and pivot and try and figure out what's working and what's not. And it's so much fun. And just the women that I'm able to help and the women that I can meet is the best part of my day, the best part of my job. I love it so much. I'm sure you can relate to all of that.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Yeah. It is, and I love your description of entrepreneurship. It's like the best thing and the worst thing and the hardest thing and the most fun thing. Sometimes all in the same day. Sometimes all in the same day, those things happen, right?
Yes.
But I mean, that courage muscle, though, that you talked about earlier, courage to ask, what you wanted, courage to get a divorce, courage to start a YouTube channel, courage to start a business, right? It's the same thing. Do you think that if you hadn't taken that step, if you hadn't sort of learned to be courageous, would you ever have started your own business?
I don't think so.
No.
I really don't. I really don't even think, and I've thought about this a lot. I really don't think if I was still married, and nothing to say that, against my ex, but I really don't think that I would have given myself permission to start a business or to go after this direction of my life. And not, obviously probably wouldn't have been divorce coaching. It would have been some other kind, but I don't even know if I would have been in the right headspace or had the same mindset that I have now to, like you said, have that courage to take that step. And so, no, I really don't think so. I think everything has led me to this point, and I can tell myself the story. My divorce story was terrible and it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, which is what so many women tell themselves about their divorce. Or the way I like to look at it, as it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And I love the woman that I've become, the woman that I'm continuing to become. And I'm so, I thank her a lot, but I am truly so grateful to Karin of, 6-7 years ago, who took that first step and said, this is what I want. And I'm going to do it.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Karin, if there's somebody listening who is maybe where you were 6 or 7 years ago, who is maybe in that place, do you have like an exercise or a practice or something that you would recommend they start with, like as a step one, dip your toe in the water kind of thing?
Well, I would say, and I say this to everyone who comes to me and says, I don't even know where to start when it comes to liking myself or getting to know myself. I always recommend that 5 things practice, because it truly is, it's like we talked about it. It seems very difficult to do, but it really is easy if you'll just open yourself up to it. And you don't have to say them out loud if you don't want. You can write them down, or you can just think about them, whatever works for you. But that is truly the first step. But also something that I've really been kind of experimenting with myself lately that feels so good. And it might be a little too advanced, maybe not. You could try it and see. Sometimes these things are just trial and error. You got to just figure out what works best for you. But when I'm really having a down day, which we all do, right? And I'm really feeling inadequate in a lot of ways, I will just get into my head and I will just kind of visualize myself sitting on my bed with another me right next to me. So there's 2 Karens, and one of them just puts her arm around the other one. Like I just put my arm around myself as I'm sitting there, as I visualize it. And I just give myself a little hug and just say, I'm here for you. I got you. We got this. We can figure it out. It's okay. And just kind of that reassurance of like, you're not alone. So we often feel so alone in this world, right? And especially when we're feeling inadequate or down on ourselves, we can feel so alone. Like, no, there's nobody out there who wants to be around us or wants to hear from us or needs us in some way, but we can show up for that person as ourselves. And so I've just been experimenting with this, and I always, after I do it, I just feel warm and loved and cozy in a way. And maybe it doesn't change my day, maybe I'm still feeling a little down, but it just perks me up just enough that I can go about my day and know that there is at least one person who loves me.
Yeah.
I got me, and I will always have me.
Yeah.
So experiment with that, maybe see if that works, gives you a little pep to your day when you're having a hard time.
Yeah. That's a great exercise. And like you said, trial and error, right? If some things might be
Yeah.
great for one person and for another person they won't be.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with trying it, and it might be uncomfortable. But sometimes the best things are on the other side of a little bit of discomfort, right? You got to stretch the comfort zone just
Oh,
a little
true.
bit.
It's so true.
Yeah, yeah. So, Karin, if listeners want to get in touch with you, if they want to find out more about the work that you do, helping women through divorce, do you help women who are actively going through divorce, post-divorce, both?
Both.
Both.
Yep.
Okay.
Both.
So if they want to find out more about you and the work that you do, where is the best place for them to find you?
So two ways. I would say go to my website, which is karinnelsoncoaching.com. I spell my name with an I. So it's Karin nelsoncoaching.com.
Okay.
I offer a free consult if you want to talk things through and figure out really what you're struggling with and how I can help. They can sign up there. But my baby that I love so much is my podcast, and it's called Becoming You Again. And it's specific for divorced women or divorcing women. And I just talk about all the things that we struggle with, all of the mental and emotional things, the pain, the, emotional resilience, and feeling confident and learning how to love yourself, and just all of the things that we go through as we're going through a divorce. And I'm having so much fun with it. I love being able to talk to women and just teach them how to show up for themselves in a way that probably most of them haven't been. And so those two ways, my website and Becoming You Again, would be how you find me.
Amazing. Amazing. And I'll make sure that the links for those are in the show notes. So it's nice and simple. You can just click straight through. Karin, this has been an absolutely fabulous conversation. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we wrap up? Any last thoughts, any last bits of wisdom? Is there anything else that is on your heart that you would like to share with us?
Wow. I think we got it all out, which feels amazing. You have asked some amazing questions and have really allowed me to be open with your audience. And I really appreciate that. So I think you got it all. You got everything out of me today.
We pulled out all the magic.
We did
all the
that's
magic.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. No, this was, I mean, it's an important conversation. Divorce used to be a thing that was very shameful, and people didn't want to talk about it, and it was very hush hush, and you know what? It's common now. It happens, and it's
so common,
and it's hard.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with getting help, getting support. And I think the more we have conversations like this, right, where there's people like you who are willing to step up and share their story, it is healing to hear that story. It gives permission.
I think so too.
Right? It gives permission to other people, and there's hope, and life after divorce can be the best thing ever.
Amazing.
Better than you could have ever imagined, right?
Amazing. Yes. Yeah. 1,000,000%. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Karin, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
My pleasure.